Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of the Gen AI podcast, where we delve into the minds of innovative leaders shaping the landscape of artificial intelligence and beyond. I'm your host, Cheryl Tyus, and today we have a remarkable guest with us. She's a trailblazer in the realms of blockchain, artificial intelligence, and sustainability. She's the CEO and founder of Everledger, a cutting-edge technology company at the forefront of blockchain solutions for industries ranging from diamonds to renewable energy. Leanne Kemp, how are you today?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Very well.
Good. First up, could you just please tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Everledger. We began in 2015, and our divine purpose is to bring transparency to some of the most opaque and conflicted supply chains in the world, which is why we started with the diamond industry. What could be more controversial than that industry alone? Winding forward now, we're pretty close to 10 years in existence, operations across 3 major capital countries in the world, capital cities in countries in the world. And we traverse beyond diamonds and colour gemstones into critical minerals, because arguably the transition to renewable energies is potentially one of the most conflicted supply chains in the world that we're yet about to see. When we think about the rush towards critical minerals, having to store renewable energy into a battery, what could be more controversial than the supply chain of cobalt or lithium or manganese or any of those critical minerals that are used as a part of the supply chain?
Oh, yeah. Well, look, I mean, on that note, how do you actually see artificial intelligence playing a role in optimizing and securing global supply chains? And what kind of challenges do you anticipate in its adoption?
Look, I mean, artificial intelligence, whilst it can be, short-coded to 2 letters, is actually quite a complex series of layered technologies together. In terms of how we use it in various different ways. Large language models help us to define and redefine the narratives around impact-related activities that might align back up into the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. They could be as simple as, social ventures that are supporting the diamond or gemstone supply chain that might be embarking upon the utilization of resources to advance nature, as a prime example. We have some of our diamond manufacturers that redefined the landscape of 70 lakes in India that then helped, as a cascading effect, to bring water to drought-ridden farmers. And now, of course, we have these adjunct industries, with the diamond industry helping to support sort of agricultural hand in hand. The second piece of artificial intelligence that we use really layers into machine vision. So our ability to see through photography or high vision resolution imagery, identification mechanisms. So some of that can be identifying a different type of gemstone from one to another. It could be identifying the attributes of a gemstone in the shape and the color and the clarity. And so there are very different ways that we use artificial intelligence, from identifying the object itself at its forensic level, right the way through to describing, the ability for the diamonds to tell its good and truthful story.
Amazing. And I look at it and notice that you've got quite heavy involvement in sustainability initiatives as well. How can blockchain technology contribute to achieving sustainability goals, and what role does it play in fostering transparency within supply chains?
I always see blockchain as a secondary layer, nearly like a halo effect to various different data stores. And so it has the ability to coordinate in a distributed fashion multiple data sources into an immutable record, which means not one single person has the ability to change that record. And so it enables us to then have this sort of halo effect across a really complex supply chain. In terms of how we see blockchain playing a role in sustainability, it really instantiates the data to help companies tell an evidentiary truth around its sustainability efforts. Now, some of that could be in carbon calculations, others could be in water utilization, or it could be, as attributed as the ESG, activities that people are using. In terms of some of the work that we've done more deeply with Australian pearls, specifically here in Australia, there was no such LCA or nature framework that existed. We had some frameworks that existed for oysters, but of course pearls, whilst they're grown in oysters, is not an oyster. And so how do we bring about the coordination effort of LCAs, life cycle assessments, carbon calculations, and then measure the eutrophication or measure the microplastics in the ocean as a prime example, and evidence that as a key set of data that not just only helps to inform a local grower or a local farmer here in Australia, but also then helps to inform other parts of the world, like South Sea, China pearls as a prime example, or Tahitian pearls. And so blockchain itself is a companion technology. It can't exist on its own without others to be able to really bring transparency to a supply chain. But it is an important truthful layer. So it does bring the ability to tell its truthful story. Now, you also have garbage in and garbage out, right? So if you put garbage in, there's garbage out. So there is a layer of validation around that data that is also critically important, which is where we balance the ability to be able to capture data through both people, man and machine. And so some of those connections that we have go directly into scanning devices as a prime example, or IoT devices, so that the machine can tell us what that is. And then other attributes of data are human entered or human readable.
Wow. Sounds absolutely incredible and way beyond my realm of understanding some of it even. I mean, it's phenomenal what you're doing. And Everledger is obviously, your company. You founded it, and after promising the family you wouldn't do any more, I noticed. But, you're a pioneer in leveraging blockchain for diamonds, gemstones, and renewables. For our audience who, a lot of them are CEOs already, but aspiring CEOs and founders, could you share a pivotal moment or challenge in your journey with Everledger that significantly shaped the company's direction?
Well, I would say sort of two points that was a pivotal moment. Firstly, starting the company, at a stage where I saw in 2011, the rise of Bitcoin and distributed ledger technologies, and really that technology has a significant amount of promise to deliver fundamental change to the world. But it's often a technology looking to solve a problem. And so what greater problem is there than bringing transparency to super opaque supply chains that have been plagued, blood diamonds is a prime example, have been plagued with some of those stories. And more recently now we have, the looming Russia sanctions that are on the horizon with the G7 countries. So there are many reasons why these problems in industry exist, and blockchain is the perfect marriage. So I think being able to have a light bulb moment where we said, here is a screaming problem that's existed for decades. There have been various disciplines of technology that have been coordinated in industry, but nothing has been able to come together in a truly global fashion. And blockchain is that coordination layer that really came about. So I think when the evolution of the technology got to such a stage where the problems sufficiently collided, that shaped the beginning of the company, the whole reason why we existed. The second big pivotal moment actually happened this year when we had and faced some pretty big headwinds with some questionable and nefarious investors as a part of our fundraising round. And that really faced up against a pretty significant moment in the business where we had to put two of the entities, trading entities, into liquidation and have a massive restructure of the organization globally. Now, that is a really big moment in time for a founder, because you look at yourself in the mirror and you say, is this a vanity project? Is there a real business here? And as you go through those machinations with really good lawyers and accountants, you start to crystallize a moment in time where the truth becomes seen and known for what it truly is. And the moment in time for me was when customers wouldn't let us just let it go easy. And so when customers were calling and saying, no, you've got to fight for this. This is really a problem to be solved. There is a value that you add to industry globally. Then it gave me a reason to get out of bed and keep on the fight. And now that's in the rear vision mirror for us. And so we look forward to, consistently enhancing what we've already built. There's over 10 million gemstones on the platforms of Everledger, both between Everledger and Provenance Proof, which focus on the color gemstone industry. So this is a small endeavor. We connect with over 600 different companies globally, and as a part of that work, we have to stay focused on consistently delivering really good product and solving those problems.
Wow. Well, look, I mean, you are a woman in tech, and I know you've talked on LinkedIn in certain posts about the importance of diversity, especially in tech leadership. How do you believe that diverse perspectives contribute to the advancement of AI and technology as a whole?
I mean, I just think it's critical. I think I wrote a post just recently, which had me shake my head when we had the most recent Sam Altman moment in time, which felt like 24 hours of craziness that unfolded over the course of a number of days. I kind of asked the question as to why the construction or the reconstruction of diversity into the forefront, just felt like it was a rush board decision. And then funnily enough, when you look at it, they're all guys on the board of OpenAI. But why? We have incredible women, incredible researchers. There were already women on the board. So what is and why did that happen? We still don't have any answers. I'm quite surprised that it hasn't become a bigger topic in the social channels. I haven't seen too many people really press on that bruise, but ultimately, if there isn't a more visible company in AI that just literally did a backflip on diversity in the course of the last 2 weeks, I'm really surprised that we haven't had more people talk about it.
Yeah, I hear you. It's something that I hear about a lot, diversity and inclusion in tech, but it's definitely a struggle. Maybe inspiring young leaders to go into the space in the first place could be the answer through stuff like this. But I guess blockchain has been explored for its social impact potential as well. Could you share any examples or insights into how Everledger or similar initiatives have positively impacted society beyond the realms of business?
Yeah, look, I think parts of our work have been in understanding two fundamentals. The first is from a material flow perspective. There's definitely an impact to the planet and to people. And so how do we enable a lot more discipline in supply chains? And one prime example of that is we are completely anti-carbon offsetting. It makes no sense whatsoever for any company to be offsetting a carbon impact by planting a tree in a different supply chain or a different country of the world. We would rather construct a platform that enables insetting, which then enables a large retailer in the US to support, a diamond mine in the Congo DRC with renewable energy infrastructure. So for us, enabling that true value creation within a supply chain where there is a definite divide between the global south and other parts of the world, that we're able to bridge that gap. So that's the first part. How do we bring the flow of money within a supply chain to really begin to lift all boats? And the second part, I think there is a definite social give back mechanism. Again, consumers are starting to become more conscious in their awareness of what they're purchasing. They're asking the questions as simply as where does something come from? They're also asking the question around the carbon impact. And so you're starting to see these things called digital product passports or carbon labels. So, a prime example, with a company we love out of New Zealand, which is called Allbirds. They make sneakers and shoes. And you walk into one of their retail outlets, even in the prominent position in London, and they show not just only the price of the shoe, but the amount of carbon that shoe has enabled, right, as a part of their supply chain. So a consumer can make that decision, and therefore they direct the spend in a certain way. Now, if we can direct the spend and give back into social endeavors, then that is a far better way of utilizing, cash flow and capital.
For sure. And I guess there's the other side of the coin as well, because blockchain has faced some criticism for its environmental impact, especially in terms of energy consumption. How do you respond to that type of concern about the carbon footprint associated with blockchain tech?
Yeah. So we run on a private permissioned ledger, which means the compute power is not in the public permissionless environment. So the criticisms that have really come about from blockchain have been in a public permissionless environment, which is the layers of Bitcoin and Ethereum, etc. We do not use any of those technologies. We never have and we never will. And so from our perspective, we are super conscious about not just only the type of technology and the inlays that we use for our protocols for blockchain, but also the housed environments where our cloud technology is stored. So we're highly critical of our providers being Microsoft Azure and Oracle, IBM, and even Google Cloud, and their data centers in terms of how they're running up their carbon footprint. So we equate for that and account for that as a part of our application layer. The cost of blockchain itself is no different to any other web deployment-based technologies. And secondly, the onus of where we host our node. And I must say, Australia is one of the dirtiest cloud providers in the world because we're still largely running on coal energy source for our data centers here. A number of our data centers able to switch in and out our servers depending upon what the requirements are for our customers, and we always preference towards a green environment. So from an Everledger perspective, we're not in the dirty blockchain world, we're in a very clean green blockchain world.
Nice. Well, just following on from that, I guess some critics also argue that blockchain and crypto can exacerbate wealth inequality. How do you think the blockchain industry can navigate that challenge and ensure it contributes to a more equitable society?
Well, I think it's the role of governments and regulation, and we're starting to see that right now. So, I mean, there's an awakening moment with everything from Binance through to, Sam Bankman-Fried and his awaited sentence for jail. I think that regulation is a critical, important role to play, and potentially some governments were just too slow to the mark. I think that those that have been in the industry for quite some time, firstly, Everledger does not have a coin. We are not tokenized, and we are not in the crypto world. So we're not a bunch of crypto bros, and we won't be facing up any criminal charges anytime soon, like a Sam Bankman-Fried or any pushing against regulation, because we simply never motivated by that. Our motivation in the world with Everledger is of pure intent to bring transparency to opaque markets. We're not here to roll up a crypto coin or tokenize, assets or NFTs or what have you.
Of course. I mean, how do you think governments and regulatory bodies should approach the regulation of blockchain tech to keep that balance between innovation and accountability healthy?
Well, I think there's two levels to this. One is how do regulators put an arms like a boom net over the top of the cryptocurrency world, just as the financial services is regulated? How do we start to see SEC really pushing in on licensing, or AFS pushing in on licensing for these types of, shadow banks, I guess you could call them? That is a regulation set that should have happened from day one. The second, more sort of tougher world, which is really what's being faced right now in the AI realm, is how do you regulate a technology, like a core technology itself and a protocol? And I think therein lies the challenge. And so blockchain probably was an early riser to AI, and so governments have to grapple with exactly how they're going to regulate protocols. And where it gets even more difficult is when these protocols are completely open source, where there is the wild west in terms of code and regulation. How do you regulate that globally? I think it's a nearly impossible task to do so, but it's the role of government to put the resources behind it and coordinate it.
Yeah, fair enough. That we'll definitely leave it to them for now. I noticed that you're a member of the Trade and Circular Economy Policy Advisory Board. How do you reckon that emerging technologies, including blockchain, can drive sustainability in a circular economy practices?
Look, circular economy to me is about understanding the materiality and the material flows, and where the highest order derivative of the use of those materials can and should be. And a prime example is the work that we've been doing in the space of, say, renewable energies, where we've built battery passports for lithium-ion batteries. Some of that work has been done with Ford Motors on its end-of-life processing of electric vehicle batteries. The other piece of work that we do is understanding the end of life for solar panels. Now, in a solar panel, there's aluminium, silica, there's even silver. Now, we can take aluminium and repurpose it and reuse it. And that, of course, is one arm of the circular economy, to reuse, repurpose, recycle, and even reinvent. But when I think about the use of silver, it's a higher order derivative if we were to use that silver in jewelry. And there's no reason why we couldn't repurpose a solar panel at its end of life. There's 34 grams of silver in every solar panel. In Australia, we're already at the end of generation 1. People are taking them off their roofs. And what are we doing? We've only just seen legislation through Tanya Plebiscite's office in the last year that prevents us from effectively digging a hole and burying it. But we still don't have an industry set of infrastructure that enables us to truly recycle some of these materials efficiently, effectively. So there's a strange bedfellow supply chain partners. Like, who would have thought that an energy company could partner with a jewelry company to recycle their silver and make a new piece of, a Pandora bracelet, or, a Tiffany ring. They use silver quite a lot in their jewelry making. So these, to me, are the really interesting circular economy initiatives. There was another one that we did in South America around using platinum out of repurposed order use of material. It's quite it's a white metal, so it looks like white gold or white silver, and it's a very strong metal. So you see it's quite an expensive metal. And so to be able to repurpose that, again, you get a fair better price.
That's absolutely insane. I had no idea there was so much silver in a solar panel. And my partner actually works in solar, and we've got some solar panels sitting out the back. So I'll be straight down the jewelers after this call, Leanne. I notice your involvement in the societal value metrics research is pretty intriguing. How can these metrics contribute to measuring the non-economic value generated by open technology, and what impact do you anticipate on the industry?
Yeah, look, this is a really tough one. This is a part of my work as the Chief Sustainability Officer for Open UK. And Open UK is a not-for-profit pseudo-government organisation that helps to look at open source and how do we bring open source initiatives both in hardware and software and focus that into the world of sustainability. And so this is where this open sort of societal metrics has come from. But arguably, we've started to see prime ministers and presidents really understand this well. And I would say probably Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand, when she was running prime minister, was fundamental in bringing to the forefront of the discussion that nations should be measuring beyond their GDP. And this was really where it came to. I mean, we have Dubai this week is COP28. And there is a minister for happiness there, which most people laugh at. But the reality is this is really a high order example of what some of the prime ministers and presidents and global leaders have already recognized, that we need to go beyond the financial metrics of a country and how do we measure this societal impact. There isn't yet a true framework that exists for the everyday small to medium enterprise or even industry, but we recognize that is an important part of the health of the world, and not just only the planet, but the people on it. And so how do we actually tackle that? So it's a very big, hairy, audacious piece of work to be tackling. But hopefully the prime ministers and presidents and a number of these leaders, whether it goes to the World Economic Forum in January or COP28 in the next week or two, these dialogues are ringing very loudly in the ears of many now.
Fair. And so the Sustainable Markets Initiative, they introduced the Terra Carta, didn't they? Could you share a bit more about how that initiative is shaping sustainability principles for the private sector and how blockchain aligns with those goals?
Yeah, so when Charles was Prince Charles, he created the Sustainable Markets Initiative, which is really driving the private sector, and chose a series of companies and CEOs to best represent various work disciplines in that space. Everything from sustainable fuels initiatives right the way across to the work that we do in supply chain and critical minerals. So Everledger was selected as a part of that first group, and we were also tapped on the shoulder as the CEOs to convene. We convene on 3 times a year, and in fact, we're convening this week in Dubai as a part of COP28. The initiative rings clear. Governments have a role to play in terms of sustainability, but indeed, private sector can move money faster than any other sector. And in the coordination of private sector funds, there is also a significance of building commerce. And so jobs can be created. Commerce is able to flow. Trade channels are able to be directed and redirected depending upon what the challenges are in nation states. And so the king himself has recognised that governments have a role to play, but so too do the private sector. So there are about 9 pillars of work streams, everything from sustainable fuels across to responsible minerals, that are driven by private sectors. And some of those are enabling physical investment funding. So there was an announcement more recently with Bank of America that released trillions of dollars in available funding coordination with major banks and insurance that might be required in, for example, carbon capture. And so carbon capture itself is a really big, deep-pocketed requirement from an investment perspective. It's also incredibly risky. In other words, we don't really know if we can do this. And that's not something that governments have an appetite to do fast. But we do know from private sector that certain industries like sustainable fuel or mining, if they're able to coordinate amongst themselves, then they are able to test and trial. So those tech level readiness scores can be moved through in a faster way. So that's the entire point of the Sustainable Market Initiative. The Terracotta is brought together as an overarching umbrella that enables us as guidance points to understand the framework or the rails upon which private sector can put the trains on the track.
Very good description there. Thank you. I think big tech companies also often play a significant role in just shaping AI ethics in general. How can the industry ensure that ethical considerations are not compromised in favor of corporate interests, especially when it comes to influential players like OpenAI?
Yeah, it's a forever a conversation topic for me every single day because OpenAI started as a not-for-profit open source initiative, and then coupled alongside that, of course, was deep-pocketed interest with Microsoft and many other big-name players. I think in 2018, there was a really great interview between Sam Altman and also Elon Musk. And in that interview, Elon made it very clear that it was completely risky, that if the power of AI was only concentrated within the hands of a small set of corporates, that would be probably one of the most dangerous positions anyone could take. Now, Elon Musk, of course, began and started to fund Open AI. We've now seen the more recent endeavors with Microsoft and the profit-making vehicle as a side vehicle to the not-for-profit, now the change of the board. And I feel like the early warning signals of Elon Musk in 2018 are somewhat coming true. And then who knows what's going to happen with Grok, right? So Grok is now being released. I think it's a really tough one because as AI becomes more intelligent, we're in a no code environment, right? Or a lesser code environment. But really to enhance AI at its truest form, we need it to be truly distributed. We need it to have some open accountability in terms of transparency at a code level. And that the open source community needs to truly remain open source, open, free, and endeavor. And I think the concentrated power into open AI is an early warning signal that we're probably going to have 2 rams butting heads together between open AI and Grok. And that is going to create an insane amount of noise and a diversion tactic away from those that are in the true open source world. So there's not enough real endeavors in open source at its truest form. Governments, of course, invite the larger brand names to the table when they're driving regulation. So I fear that when I get to a nursing home and I'm looking backwards, that I think that it's going to be tangled spaghetti and we'll be shaking our head. Okay. I don't know that it's going to play out astronomically in the next 10 years, but I certainly think in 25 we'll be, again, looking back upon ourselves like we do today and have realized the mistakes that we made. And I think we might be on the wrong side of history as we're watching this unfold.
Yeah, worrying, definitely worrying. And obviously, when it comes to privacy concerns as well in AI and blockchain, you know, the use of AI and blockchain in various industries does raise a few concerns about that. How do you think you best balance the potential benefits of the tech with the need to protect individuals' privacy, and what safeguards do you think are necessary?
So I think, look, in a blockchain environment, in its purest form at a protocol level, there are ways to have privacy preserving mechanisms. Protocols like ZKP is a prime example, secured sharing, homomorphic encryption, you know, a number of those layers of technology does actually provide the ability for the power of privacy to be put into the hands of the everyday consumer. Again, I think it's around the intention of the leaders that are commanding this technology and where they're placing it into the hands of their commercial driven activities. And again, you know, when we start to see some of the early stage of what happened with the crude, people were pretty untrue relatively quickly, right? So I think there is no one direct line answer to your question. However, there are good actors and there are bad actors. There are those that are driven purely for profit, and there are those that are in the open source community that do want to see the baseline protocols develop in such a way where the power of that consumer does have the ability to take on their own privacy preserving mechanisms. And what I do enjoy is that Tim Berners-Lee, who of course is one of the greatest of all times, who arguably was the inventor of the World Wide Web, is driving the W3C consortium with exactly this in mind. Again, he's looked in the rear vision mirror in the way upon which the internet has evolved and has recognized and realized the shortcomings or the mistakes, and is now setting about trying to bring change into an already existing, highly wired, internet. So I do think there are thought leaders of our time that are driven by the purest mechanisms to fix it right for the next generation.
Agreed. And look, Leanne, I could literally talk to you all day. We're going to have you back on another time as well, because Zoom dictates that we must finish soon. But I just want to ask you, for all the aspiring tech entrepreneurs, what advice would you offer based on your journey, especially considering the rapid pace of change in the tech and AI landscape?
Look, I think as an entrepreneur, you've got to have this burning desire and reason to do whatever it is that you're choosing to do, right? It could be a personal experience. Often we find health tech has some direct connection to, a personal story of health concerns. Mine has been a curiosity for truth and transparency, and just a complete injustice between the global south and hence the work that we're doing in the Congo and places in Botswana and the diamond industry. I think you've got to have a reason to do this, but it needs to be a burning platform. And so nothing can survive unless there's a true problem to solve, and that problem to solve has to be solved, right? I think a nice to have or a maybe to have, often the candle burns out before you get to see the true potential. So it's moments in time like I faced this year where the customers gave me the wings to fly again, and reinforced the fact that it's the work that we're doing is critically important and it must continue. And so for me, when you face the highest order of challenge, whether that be financial, structural, or governance, you've got to rise above it and get out of bed every single day and keep running.
Totally hear you and totally agree. Couldn't agree more. And Leanne, thank you so much for all your valuable insights today. I, for one, have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. And where can people find out more about you?
Stalking's always a good place to start. On LinkedIn, I a little bit of on Twitter or X. Yeah, I'm never far away from the keyboard, so it's always easy to see what I'm thinking and type. And I always type what I'm doing or type what I'm acting out. So yeah, it's easy to find.
Yeah, I have a feeling we'll have to do another one of these anyway. There's so many more questions for you. But if you're as fascinated by the future of blockchain as I am, please make sure to follow Leanne on her journey. And we'll be back next time for more thought-provoking conversations with trailblazers in the AI space. Until then, this is Cheryl Tyus, and that was the Gen AI podcast.